So, I've not done a video for a little while, and that is because I've been playing a game called Deliver Us Mars. And those of you familiar with the channel will know that I typically do a do not buy, or is it worth buying, and more often than not, I typically play about an hour of a game. Except the reason I haven't done a video for a little while is because Deliver Us Mars has consumed me for around 8 hours worth of gameplay. That does include breaks, that does include pausing and things like that. So overall, I have completed the game from start to finish. Overall, I would say this game's going to last you anywhere between maybe 6 and 8 hours. So this game isn't huge in terms of its length, but it's also not going to cost you £70. This game on Steam is going to cost you £25 or about $30. And I jumped into this one with no expectations. The reason for that is because I was looking through the Steam reviews, and I think shortly after it came out, it probably had no more than, say, 70 or 80 reviews. A lot of people were saying that there are a load of performance issues. If you try running the game in DirectX 12, you're just going to come across bug after bug. When you're in cutscenes, it drops to 5 frames per second. And I don't know the reason people are having that experience, but for me, it was really, really smooth. I didn't have pretty much any frame drops throughout the entire game. Maybe besides a bit of loading or something like that. There are a couple of minor issues, I would say, with the game. But from the very, very beginning of Deliver Us Mars, there is a good story. It pulls you in. And this game is story-rich. It's mainly just a story. You don't actually get that much gameplay. And I don't normally play a story-driven game. But this one just had me hooked from the very beginning of the game. But one of the things that let it down for me was the terrible, and I mean terrible, character models. And not only that, the hair on the characters is it is awful. And that's me still trying to be nice about it. The character models and the hair for the characters was not good at all. But they absolutely nailed it with the atmosphere, the level design, the graphics was really, really good for this one overall. And with there being a lot of cutscenes, I would say because it was roughly 7 hours, 20 minutes of recording, but there were a couple of pauses here and there. And on my Steam account, it says I played 8.7 hours, because when I was off doing other things and just having little breaks and stuff, grabbing a drink and going to the toilet or whatever, I left the game running. That's why the Steam runtime is longer than the recording, because I could always pause it during recordings and stuff. But with there being a lot of cutscenes, we'll say the game has an average playtime of about 7 hours. I would say about 4 or 5 of that is going to be cutscenes, but they do a very good job at keeping the story engaging. There wasn't a time at all where I felt, I don't want to play this game anymore, I'll come back, play it another time, or anything like that. And as I said at the start of the video, I normally play games for about an hour or two, and then I've made up my mind if I'm going to carry on or not. This one, after about 20 minutes, I just wanted to carry on, and then I actually went to sleep a lot later than I originally anticipated, and I had to come back to the game the next day. I wanted to finish it all in one day because it just kept me engaged that much. And another very, very minor issue is when you do go to the level of the clouds, I'm going to try and keep everything spoiler-free, but when you get to the same level as the clouds, they are flat. They're 2D clouds. They are literally just a flat 2D texture. But it doesn't take away from the gameplay experience. It's just me pointing out something that could have been done a little bit better. As I said with the Steam reviews, a lot of people complaining about performance issues. I didn't have any with this game. There was maybe a couple of times where there would be a little bit of a jolt, but that's say twice in 7 hours of gameplay. So the game for me, and I run 16 gig RAM DDR4, I've got an RTX 2070 Super, I've got a Ryzen 7 3700X. My PC is by no means a beefy beast of a machine, but I was able to run it with no performance issues, and there's been a lot of times in the past where there's been a load of negative reviews based on performance, and the game has run really smooth. So I question every now and then if a couple of reviews are maybe because people don't have the correct hardware to run the game on the settings they're trying to run it at. Because if you're going for recommended settings and that's optimized for 1080p and you're trying to run this in 4K or something like that, you're going to have performance issues. So I don't know. The Steam reviews were putting me off at the start, but I'm very, very glad I ignored them. And it's happened with a few games recently. But not only that, there were a couple of parts in the story with the cutscenes that were a little bit confusing. So I would say they were slightly immersion breaking, because you're getting into a story, then all of a sudden something switches and it kind of takes you away from what you was currently focusing on. But then there are kind of two parts that make up this story. You've got like your current sort of life, and then you've got essentially flashbacks and dreams and stuff. But it was a little bit weird how they did it, and there were some like really, really sudden cuts and stuff. And then some of the game, like I would say a decent portion of the gameplay is made up of puzzles. There's quite a lot of climbing in this game as well, using ice picks or like climbing picks. But the puzzles in this game were actually enjoyable. A couple that were a little bit on the more challenging side could get a bit tedious. But overall, I did enjoy the puzzles in this game as well. They weren't ever like far too challenging or anything like that. It was just about figuring them out. But it wasn't something that was going to make you rage quit the game or anything like that. It doesn't ever get that stressful. It's a really relaxing, chill game. And not only that, like there's this part where you're going up into space. The game's called Deliver Us Mars, so you go to space. And they did really, really well. And I wasn't going to include this in the video, but I want to give credit to the people that designed it, because it just looks so good. Like you're floating above the Earth, and just the way you look down on the planet, it's fantastic. As I said, the atmosphere is so good in this game. But then there was another little negative that I'm going to bring into it. And when you are watching cutscenes, if they're trying to focus on a character in the background of that cutscene, they will add a blur to the faces that are in the front of the cutscene, and then when they switch over to those faces back at the front, they will blur out the ones in the background again. And just like changing from blur to blur, like different focuses basically. Changing to and from was really sharp, really sudden, really fast, and it was quite over the top at times. It wasn't ever something that was done like with minimal effect. Like you can really see when they change the focus from character to character. And then also there was one quite big problem, but luckily going to the main menu and then pressing continue fixed it. You have this like robot, like drone thing that follows you around called Ayla. And there was a bug that I encountered where Ayla didn't spawn in. So I was looking around, I was trying to figure out a puzzle for about half an hour that I needed my drone for, but my drone didn't spawn in. It bugged out somewhere. But as I said, I quit to the main menu, I loaded back in, and Ayla was there, so I was able to make progress. But if people don't figure that out, and Ayla's not there, you could potentially sit there for a good hour or so trying to figure out a puzzle when there's actually a progression blocking bug. Even though it's fixable, it could be frustrating for quite a lot of people. And then my only other downfall for this game was the textures can take a little while to render in properly in quite a lot of areas in the game. But apart from those minor negatives, nothing else bad. The story, I can't emphasize enough. I can't give it enough credit. The story really pulled me in with this one. From start to finish, there was never a moment I wanted to leave the game and get away from it. And I'm not normally one to play a single-player story game. Like, I've played loads of story games, but I never really play games that are focused on the story. And I sat there, I watched every single cutscene. And those of you familiar with the channel will know that I typically skip cutscenes. But I sat there, I watched it all. I went along with the story, and it was such a good experience. £25 is an absolute steal for this game. So my final verdict, the conclusion or whatever, if you are looking for a story-based game that has some decent gameplay in there, that's going to keep you engaged from start to finish, yes, I 100% say Deliver Us Mars is worth buying. In fact, I would recommend that you go pick the game up right now, get it installed and start playing it. It's a fantastic game through and through. I love what they did with it. I was kind of expecting, because there's been a lot of games and films and stuff in the past, I was kind of expecting to get through it, love the story, and they leave it on a really like harsh cliffhanger, or they just have a really bad ending. And it was neither. It was a very, very good experience. So is it worth buying Deliver Us Mars? 100% yes. And what we're going to do is leave that video there. Let me know your thoughts and stuff about this game in the comments, and check out this video if you want to see other content on the channel. I will see you in the next one. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you for watching.